Hey guys, this is Sharad with Recently Podcast. Super excited to have Jake McKinney on this podcast to talk about his experience in real estate investing and share his story. Hey Jake, welcome to Recently Podcast. How are you, man?
Oh, great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, thank you so much for jumping on this call. Just to get started, just share a little bit about kind of where do you live, what kind of investing do you do, what market you're investing in, just to kind of so everybody knows, a little bit about your story.
Sure. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is about an hour north of Denver, a small little town, about 160,000 people, college town. But I'm actually from Texas. So I grew up in Austin, but my family is from Amarillo. And I lived in Amarillo for a long time. And that's where I really started investing in real estate. So we do a lot of different things. We have a pretty large rental portfolio. We've done quite a few flips over the last few years. We've done a little bit of wholesaling, but that's never really been our focus. And these days we do mostly creative finance. So we do a lot of wraps. We buy subject to, we buy with owner financing. We do our own version of novations, which is a little bit different than maybe how other people do it. Yeah, we really focus on creating notes. So we buy and sell notes. We're pretty deep into that whole part of the real estate investing space.
I know you live in Colorado and you're originally from Texas. Is that where you're investing in Texas?
Yes, our primary markets are Amarillo and Lubbock, which is the Texas Panhandle. They're good markets for cash flowing rentals, so they're also good markets for the kind of owner financing strategies that we do. But we also have properties in multiple states. So we have some properties in Louisiana. We had some properties in Michigan where we just sold, and then we're starting to do some flips up here in Fort Collins. We used to do a lot of flipping remotely in Texas, and we found that for the same amount of work, we can make four times the profit on a single deal up
Oh,
here
wow.
in Colorado. So we're not really flipping anymore back in Texas. We're only flipping up here where I'm local, but still doing all of our rentals and creative finance stuff back in
Got
Texas.
it. And then how long have you been investing for?
I guess technically like 10 years.
Okay.
I got my first rental property, which is a whole other story. I inherited a fourplex from a family member that passed away. That was kind of a nightmare. So I learned all of the hard lessons that you could
Oh,
learn
wow.
on that property. And afterwards, I guess I'm a glutton for punishment because I thought that's amazing. I want to do more of that.
So what were you doing before investing? Is that like did you have a corporate job or what was your background before
I-
that?
I've I've had a few different lives, I guess. So when I was young, I actually went to culinary school in New York, and I worked as
Oh,
a
wow.
professional chef for about 10 years
Oh, that is so
in
cool.
different restaurants in Colorado and in Texas. I was a private chef for a while, and got burned out and didn't really know what I was going to do. I went back to school and got a degree, and right about that time, some things happened, changed in my family. And my family, I come from a family of cattle ranchers, so third generation cattle rancher, and our ranch is just north of Amarillo, and it was really going to fall on me to run that our family's cattle ranch, or otherwise we needed to sell it or lease it out. And so I moved to Amarillo and operated my family's cattle ranch for about, well, we still operate it, but I lived there for over 10 years operating the family's cattle ranch. Now I operate it remotely, and I still go back once a month.
Oh, you've had some very interesting experiences. So how did you, I'm very
Yeah.
curious, how did you get started in real estate? Was it the fourplex that you inherited that kind of, got you started, or did you
Yeah.
have any interest in investing before that?
Oh, I did. I was always reading books, and I thought about getting my real estate license, and it always seemed a little bit overwhelming. Like I didn't know where to start. I thought you had to have a real estate license in order to do these kind of
Right.
things. And so it was really the circumstance of being forced to deal with this property, and it was in complete disrepair. It needed a full rehab. It was completely vacant. All four units were vacant. So we had to start from scratch, and we got cheated out of money from contractors, and we learned how to rehab things remotely, and we turned two of them into long-term rentals. We kept one for ourselves because it's in New Orleans, Louisiana, so in a great location. and then part of it is a short-term rental as well. We're actually transitioning a little bit into a midterm rental right now. But yeah, that
Oh,
was the start. It was forced upon me, even though I'd always thought about it and always wanted to do it.
right. So is that all you do now? Real estate investing?
Yeah, that's 90% of my time. And then the other 10% is still managing my family's cattle ranch back in Texas, but it pretty much manages itself these days. I have great employees and have a great partner on the cattle themselves. And so
Right.
I get to spend all my time doing real estate investment.
Cool, man. I'm curious. You said you don't do a lot of wholesaling, but you see, it's
Yeah.
pretty like in this business, pretty common for someone to just, start out by doing a lot of wholesaling. Was
Mhm.
there something in particular about wholesaling that you didn't want to go down that path and just focus more on like building rental portfolio and then, flipping, creative financing?
Yeah, I think my journey is and I hear this a lot from some of my friends who are investors that you get into this business and you have one goal in mind, and then you start seeing what other people are doing. You start seeing the possibilities. You start joining masterminds and paying for courses and being in all these groups. And then you lose sight of why you got into the business to begin with. So when I started, it was really just to build a rental portfolio. And pretty soon I started doing direct to seller marketing. And then we had so many leads, we thought, oh, let's start flipping. Next thing you know, I have a huge team and we're flipping 10 to 15 properties at a time. And we have full time construction crews. And then there's so many leads. Now we've got to start wholesaling and I've got to hire more people and I'm hiring acquisition managers and I'm hiring disposition managers. And I grew a team to about 15 people. I scaled way too fast. I made tons of mistakes and I really lost sight of why I got into the business to begin with. And so last year, when the market shifted, I stripped the business all the way down to the bare minimum. And we thought about, okay, what are the things that are the most profitable that we're doing? And what are the things that we like doing the most? And it was all the creative finance stuff that we were doing, all the creating notes, doing wraps, buying with owner financing and sub twos and all that kind of stuff. And the wholesale part of the business, I really didn't like very much, and I wasn't very good at it, to be honest. And so we really changed a lot about a year ago, and now our team is only about 5 people, including me, whereas it used to be about 15. And we're more profitable and we're having more fun and we're doing the things that we want to do now.
Oh man, congratulations on all the success. So yeah, walk me through on like what's a typical deal for you with creative financing? You mentioned you buy and sell notes. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah,
I haven't done any of that, so I'm really curious, like, what's a typical deal like that for you?
it's a good question and it's hard to answer because every one of them is different, right? Um, but I think one of the ways that we can think about it is that we can buy in a lot of different ways. And we're usually looking for a similar exit strategy. So we can buy with, subject to, so taking over payments on the mortgage. We can buy with owner financing, which is our absolute favorite way to do it. We have a lot of creative ways to structure deals for our sellers. Tired landlords are our favorite people to work with because a lot of times these are older investors who have a rental portfolio. They're tired of dealing with renters. They're tired of doing rehab. And we can give them true passive income and mailbox money and take that over. And then we'll wrap their debt with another mortgage on top of it and sell to an in-home buyer, usually for more money. So there's an equity spread and there's also an interest rate spread as well. But we can buy in other ways too. So we can buy with private money. So we're raising tons of private capital so that we can go out and buy these deals and we give a very consistent, very secure return to our investors. And then we're able to go out and wrap that debt that we're raising from private investors and do the exact same strategy and sell to in home buyers. The last way that we can do that is that we can use our own cash to buy these deals. And when we do that, we typically will do the exact same thing, will sell to an in-home buyer. But then when we create that note, we have different ways that we can structure the end note so that we can go sell part of that to a note investor, somebody who's buying notes, and we can get all of our capital out of the deal, but we're still creating a note that's creating cash flow and has some sort of equity position in it. So when that home buyer sells or refinances, we get a nice little check in the mail for that.
For the sub two deals that you're doing, I know a lot of investors that you talk to, they question about, their concern is about would the bank, call the loan back. Has that ever happened to you where it was like due on
No,
sale clause? No. Do you make
no, I've
sure
I've
that
never had
it's,
a
I
due on
mean,
sale clause, but I
right,
assume that it's going to happen at some point. I don't. I always plan for the worst, and so
right,
part of why we've invested the time to be good at selling notes, because it was a whole nother part of the business that we had to learn and implement. And the same way that you build a buyer's list for wholesale deals, we built a buyer's list for notes. We did that in part as protection against due on sale clause. So I don't really care if a due on sale happens, because if that happens, I have a way to get out of the deal and sell that underlying debt to an in note buyer and pay the bank back. We're also raising a lot of private money, so I could bring a private money investor and pay the bank back, and they could come into that position on the deal as well. And it's not to be flippant about it. I think due on sale is something that everybody should be concerned about. But I've also made every single mistake that you could
right,
possibly make on a sub two deal, and I've never had a due on sale. We're a
right.
lot better at it now, but in the beginning, I didn't totally know what I was doing, and I messed up the insurance and I messed up that, and all the things that you can mess up, and I still didn't get a due on sale clause so most of the time, especially in these large banks like Nation Star, Mr. Cooper, US Bank, all these big bureaucracies, they're not looking to call notes due as long as the payments are being made every
Payment. I want to walk through an example of, let's say, owner financing. Let's say if I'm a seller, right? And I have
month.
a property, let's say that's worth about 200,000. I have $150,000 worth of loan on it, let's say at 5%. Is that a deal that
Yeah. Mhm.
you would buy? What does a typical deal right now
Yeah,
is what look like for you? I'm
yeah.
just I'm just trying to understand like
There's
how do you
different ways
make
to
your money
structure
on
it
it?
because
Yeah.
right, and so there's I think one of the things that's counterintuitive to a lot of people is that depending on the terms that we can get from a seller, I don't really care about what the sales price is. So a lot of times we're offering people full retail, but in those situations, they're carrying their equity to us at 0% interest or 2% interest, very, very low interest rates. And so we have arbitrage on the interest rate. We don't necessarily have to have a lot of equity. Now, I would say I feel a little bit about sub twos. So I do not buy low equity sub twos because that to me is scary. You are backed into a corner where if the bank did call the note due, you don't have as many options to get out of it if you don't have any equity in that
Right.
in that deal. So, but for a straight owner finance deal or say a private money deal, there's different ways that I can structure that where I can give almost full retail to the seller. We've done that multiple times because they're willing to carry their equity, and they don't have to have 100% equity. A lot of times, some of these sellers will have 50% equity. So we'll bring in a private money lender to, let's say, wipe out their mortgage because they don't want to do a sub two. And I never force anybody to try to do a sub two. It really has to be a solution to a problem for someone to want to do a sub two. But so we can bring in a private money lender, and let's say that private money lender's at 8% interest. And then the seller is willing to carry their equity at 0% interest. So then we have a blended interest rate of 4%. And I'm willing to give that seller almost full market retail for that because I can then go sell that deal at 10% interest to an in-home buyer.
Got it. And then for you, the owner financing deal, would that only work if I own the property free and clear? Otherwise, it would be
No,
subject
like I
to, is that
said, yeah,
right?
yeah. So if they have usually if and they need at least 50 to 40% equity for these numbers to kind of work. But if they have that, I can bring in a private money lender to pay off
Right.
their
Pay off that.
mortgage, and then they just carry the equity, and we're
Right.
giving them a small down payment at closing. Usually, sometimes nothing at closing. They don't really care. They care about, am I going to get actual passive income? Because they've been I'm also a landlord. We have about 130 doors of rentals across a few states, and I can tell you that that is not passive income. And the cash
It's
flow that
not.
you think you're going to get for those rentals
Yeah.
is never as much as what you think it's going to be.
Right.
And a lot of these landlords are happy to get out of this deal and actually realize some real passive mailbox money.
How are you finding these sellers? Are you doing like direct to seller marketing, similar to kind of what a wholesaler would do, your direct mail, PPC? Is that what you're doing?
Yes and no. So it's changed dramatically from what we used to do. So back when we were doing tons of flips and wholesaling and all of that, I had a marketing budget of almost $30,000 a month.
Yeah.
Now our marketing budget is less than $2,000 per month, and we do that specifically with very, very targeted direct mail campaigns. So we're stacking lists and sending direct mail campaigns to tired landlords who also have some pain points. So those are really good leads for us. And then we've done some PPL. We're experimenting with some Facebook ads and some PPC, very small campaigns, but we don't have to do any SMS, and we don't do any cold calling anymore. We shut that down 6, 9 months ago. We haven't done it in a
Nice.
long, long time, and
Man, that's
I
that's
sleep a lot better at
incredible.
night, and I have a
Oh
lot less
yeah, I was
stress.
gonna say, lucky you. You don't have to do any cold calling and SMS. Yeah, I bet a lot of investors would want to be in your seat right now. Who are you competing with for these seller leads? Are you competing with a wholesaler who's offering cash? Are you competing with
Mhm.
these sellers wanting to list their property? Because it's not a traditional transaction you're doing, right? You send
Right.
a mailer to these people, to these homeowners. What are you saying in this mailer? Hey, I will buy a property, with the direct mail that we send for our, flipping business, where we say, hey, we'll pay you cash, closing, a typical postcard that a wholesaler investor send. Like, what are you sending, and what's your message to these homeowners?
To be honest, we're not putting as much effort into that as we should. It's been on the to-do list to do some split testing with different kinds of mailers, because I think we could have an even better response rate than we have right now. But even just sending out a basic postcard, because it's such a targeted list and highly stacked, we're getting at least a 1% response rate from these
That's
mailers,
incredible.
which is good compared to what a
That's
lot of
very
people are
good.
getting. But I think we could even be better if we were sending a higher quality mailer, and doing something targeted to specifically to our exit strategy and to these tired landlords. Because honestly, the conversation goes really well most of the time once we get them on the phone. They're savvy, they understand what we're doing, and we can be fully transparent with them of what our exit strategy is, and they're on board and usually excited about it.
And then you don't have to do a lot of convincing on like why you should sell to us on terms rather than sell it to another investor for cash or list your property. Because I've done like
Yeah.
one owner financing deals way back, but it was just a very $25,000 deal. Like, I'll pay you, it came out to like $250 a month, but it was
Mhm.
pretty straightforward. But you're doing this at a very large scale. So you're training your acquisition people, your team on that. Like, how does that, like, what's the biggest, objection you get from the seller?
I don't know if it's an objection per se. I think when they understand what we do, it's either a fit or it's not. And the objections that we're overcoming, it's a lot of just negotiation. Then it just gets into price, rate, terms. I mean, they're usually savvy people. They understand um, all of all of these moving pieces, and so I think the biggest challenge is just that kind of negotiation with someone who knows what they're talking about, right? So the level of the conversation needs to be a little bit higher, and this isn't, I mean, you were talking about scale. It's very difficult to scale this business. It's not, a wholesale business is much, much easier to scale. You can train acquisitions people to have those kind of conversations. You can scale your lead gen much, much easier. That's not the kind of business that we want to run. We have no intention of scaling larger than we already are, really. Um, because it is almost like we're craftsmen, right? Each deal is different.
Makes
We're
sense. Yeah.
crafting offers specifically for these sellers, and so the only people that are talking to these people are me and my partner Andrew, and so
Okay.
we're not hiring acquisition managers. We don't even have lead managers. We have a follow-up specialist, and that's it. And that's really just to make sure that we're staying in front of the people that are in our CRM. We're much more focused on the back end. So finding deals for us is not hard. We can find more deals than we have the ability to do. What's harder for us is that we treat finding buyers the same way that other people treat finding sellers. So we run direct mail campaigns, we run
Gotcha.
Facebook
Yeah.
ads. We're doing everything that a normal like wholesaler would do to find sellers, we do to find our buyers. And we're constantly trying to improve our buyer database and remarketing to our buyers so that we can try to find the best quality buyers who have the highest down payment, et cetera, et cetera.
Got it. Got it. So let's say, so you get a deal, let's say you get a deal from a seller at a blended rate of 5%, right? So let's just talk about the other side of the business. Like who are you selling these properties to? Let's say you get, $200,000 house, blended rate of 5%.
Yeah.
Okay, what are the next steps?
Yeah. So the next steps are we've experimented with a lot of different ways to sell these deals. And we've kind of come full circle to when I first started doing this. The first one I ever did was really an experiment because I had learned how to do this from an investor in San Antonio named Mitch Stevens, who's done several
Oh
thousand of
yeah,
these. And
yeah.
so I just
Everybody
I
knows
just
Mitch
copied
Stevens,
and
yeah.
pasted. Yeah, like I just copied and pasted what he did because I wanted to see if I could do it. And we did it. And the easiest way to sell these deals is oftentimes the simplest, which is put a sign in the yard, post in the Facebook groups. But we do some other things on top of that. So we'll do targeted direct mail campaigns to everyone within a quarter-mile radius of that house. And we offer a buyer referral fee of $1,000. If you bring us a buyer, we'll give you $1,000. We've also posted them on the MLS. I think the MLS is actually challenging. It's almost a detriment sometimes because then you've got realtors in the middle of this transaction and they don't really understand what it is. And so now you have to overcome a bunch of objections from realtors. And you can't have a direct conversation with your end buyer and walk them through the process. So we much rather directly market to our buyers and not have a realtor in the middle of it. And the simplest methods are the best. I mean, we get in the beginning when we were just really pivoting to this about a year ago, it was challenging. We didn't really know how to generate leads for buyers very well. Now, if I want to, I can get 40 to 50 leads per day for buyers, and it's pretty easy. It's almost like we get too many leads for buyers these days.
So your buyers are typically people that have had challenges getting traditional bank financing. You're selling to
Yes.
them on terms, right? So you're having them put,
Yeah.
percentage of money down, selling it to them, and then and then you're making money on the arbitrage in some cases. In some cases, you'll have equity. But are you
Mhm.
also selling this? So you, in some cases, you'll sell these to other investors at a discounted interest rate and then cash out ahead of time, right? Before the buyer buys the property.
Yeah. The for the notes.
For the notes, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We also will take our underlying debt and act like as a hard money lender for other investors. So
Right.
our buy box now is that we don't do big rehabs. I've done huge monster rehabs on houses, and we have done probably 75 flips in the last few years, and I don't want to really be a flipper anymore. Only for the specific, I want to do like 6 high-end flips in Fort Collins per year where I live. I don't want to do volume, low margin flips like what we were doing in
Right.
Texas. So if I get a deal into our system and it doesn't fit our buy box, sometimes we'll still put it under contract with terms, and then we go and act as a hard money lender for other investors, and we're still wrapping that debt and creating arbitrage on the interest rate. We're not selling to end home buyer, we're selling to another investor, and it's actually simpler and easier. We've probably done that about 15 times, I think.
So someone who's listening to this podcast, a newer investor, would you say like going down this, route of creative financing, is it a good, path for someone who's starting out, or would you say, hey, just get your feet wet doing, a couple of traditional deals just so that you get familiar with the real estate investing industry as a whole, and then maybe, look into creative financing?
It's a good question. I think I would answer that by first saying that you need to be very, very clear about what it is that you want. Back to my earlier point about when I built a whole big, huge business that I didn't even want to own, right? And I had to strip it all down to the bare bones so that I could build it back to what it was that I actually wanted to own. And so I'm never want to tell somebody else what kind of business they should have, because it's really different for every single person. Some people are absolutely wired to go out and build the biggest wholesaling operation that they can build, and more power to them. That's amazing. That is not what I was put here to do. I've tried to do it and it did not work, and I wasn't well suited to it and I hated it. So I think everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses, and you should build the business that you want and build the business that you think you can be successful building. If you want to get into this space, in the creative finance space, then I would say go slow and be patient and learn as much as you can. I'm still learning things every day. We're still innovating. We're still learning new things and trying to implement them. Sometimes it's because the market's changing or regulations are changing, but there's still a huge amount of knowledge that I still don't know, even though I've been doing this a long time and probably done, gosh, I don't know, 40 to 50 different creative finance transactions in my lifetime. There's still things that I don't know. I think the only way to really learn this stuff is by doing it. I've bought a lot of courses and I've been a part of a lot of masterminds on creative finance, and they're all useful and they're all helpful, but it's nothing compared to actually going out and doing the
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah. No,
And so I would
absolutely. Yeah.
also advise that you get a really good title company and a really good attorney on your team that you can ask questions to and bounce ideas off of. That's invaluable. You really need a team behind you of professionals to help guide you through this. You don't want to be winging it and trying to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in like creative financing, you would want to make sure like the paperwork is done correctly, everything is filed correctly. You don't want to, there's so many
Yeah.
different parties involved. So yeah, definitely recommend that. I'm curious, you mentioned about the like change in market conditions. How does your business get impacted by interest rate? Is it better for you when the interest rate goes up, or is it better for you when the interest rate is lower? It really doesn't affect because, you're just paying a little bit more in interest rate when it's higher, but then the end buyer is also paying higher just because it's gone up for everyone.
I mean, the short answer is that everyone is impacted by interest rates. It doesn't really matter
Right.
what you're doing. You're going to feel the effects of it in some way in your business. However, I would think that my business is a little bit more insulated from that, as opposed to someone who's just wholesaling or flipping, because I kind of live outside the system. I don't really care what the interest rates are. I can go negotiate lower interest rates for the things that we're purchasing. And then when we're selling to end home buyers, it's really just about affordability. Can we sell something at a price and at a monthly payment that people can afford to purchase? So that's what we really focus on is affordability. And and really kind of living outside of the system. I haven't taken a hard money loan in a year, which
Oh
also
wow.
feels pretty good. I used to have a
Yeah.
lot of hard money loans out there for all of our flips.
Yeah, I think it's got to be great that you can have, you can have your own terms. I mean, with the sellers, like you can negotiate your own terms, and same thing with the buyers. You're not like, set, driven based on what the traditional lender is giving you. You can have like whatever you can negotiate. I mean, you can negotiate 0% interest rate. Yeah, absolutely. If the seller is willing to do that. And then if you can get, the end buyer to pay 10% down and then get them at 10% interest rate and then make it like 30, 35 year, because you're the bank in that case. So, I mean,
Yeah.
there's like no limit to how much money you can make on it. And when they do traditional financing, you cash out on it and just keep repeating. So I think it's great, man. It's just, to me, it's from the outside, it seems like a very difficult business to get into. But I feel like once you get into it, once you get hooked to it, you're like, man, there's nothing else I would want to do. Because you're right, the point that you mentioned about owning rental properties, I own few rental properties, and it's definitely not passive. It's not something that you're just sitting back at the beach, chilling and drinking your pina coladas and the money's coming in. It doesn't happen like that. I had to like have my own in-house property management company just so that I could limit the number of issues that I was dealing with. So it's a very challenging business. And with what you are doing, feel like both the seller that you're buying the property from and then the person that you're selling to, they're more invested into that property. So there's like less headache for you to deal with. Is that kind of what you've noticed compared to working with tenants?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we plan for a certain amount of foreclosure rate. Luckily, we've never had
Yeah.
to foreclose on someone, and we've, had to send some letters and, get people caught up. And sometimes we're working with them because something's going on in their life, and we're putting them on a payment plan or something like that to get them caught up. But we've never had to foreclose on anyone and kick them out of their house, which is great. And I think that's the thing that people are most afraid of with this, and it's something that we're conscious of because I'm pretty risk averse, and so if we're doing a large number of these, and then we've got, private money that we've got to pay and owner financing that we've got to pay on. I take those responsibilities very seriously. I would never ever want to miss a payment to any of our lenders, whether that's a seller or a private money lender or anyone. So we've stress tested this to, we could be at a 15% foreclosure rate and still be able to make all of our payments and be profitable.
That's
50, if
incredible.
15% of our people just stop paying tomorrow, we'd still be okay. Now, there could be a black swan event. There could be another COVID, and I would need to go to my lenders and say, hey, I'm sorry, we got to work something out. But we've never had a foreclosure. So, if something happens in 2024 and the market completely tanks and the economy, we're in a deep recession, I plan on that we're going to have more foreclosures. But I think our business would still be strong and we'd still be able to pay all of our lenders, even if the worst happened. Um, because to be honest, the worst case scenario is actually ends up being profitable for us. If someone can't make their payments and we have to kick them out of their home, well, we've already gotten a sizable down payment from them. Foreclosures are pretty affordable to do in Texas, and so we would have to foreclose on them, and then we would just resell it and get another down payment. We're actually net positive on that. That's not something we ever want to do. We want people to stay in their home. We underwrite them properly and send them through an Amarillo and all those kind of things because we want to make sure that they have the ability to repay. But yeah, the headaches that we have on that side are nothing compared to the headaches that we have
Oh, absolutely.
with renters and rental properties. These people are excited for the opportunity to be a homeowner. They've been shut out of the traditional banking system for whatever reason. A lot of these people are immigrants, or they are W-2 or sorry, 1099 employees. We've
And
sold to multiple truck drivers. They make good money, but they can't get a traditional loan because they don't have a W-2 income. So I think the money part is great, and then there's the icing on the cake that we get a lot of emotional paychecks by putting people in
Oh,
homes that
absolutely.
otherwise wouldn't be able to live the American dream of homeownership.
Awesome, man. Couple of quick questions, then we'll move on to the next section of the show. What's the minimum down payment that you require?
We really like to get 10%, but we will take lower for a really quality buyer. So we have some rules of thumb, and we can be a little bit flexible on that because we're really looking at the whole picture of who this buyer is. So if somebody comes to us and they've got a good credit score, they've got a good job, they've been in their job for a long time, we think their ability to repay is really, really strong. We'll take a little bit lower down payment, especially if the house needs some work. That's a lot of times where we're negotiating, is that we're not selling houses that are completely fixed up. That's the great thing about owner financing, is that we want to make sure that all the systems work and it's move-in ready. Somebody can move into that house and live in it. But a lot of times it hasn't been updated in 30 years, and the floor, all the flooring needs to be replaced and it needs to be painted. And depending on how much that rehab is, we're willing to take a lower down payment because they're going to go in and fix up the property and improve our collateral. It makes our position that much stronger when they go in and
Okay.
put a bunch of work into the property.
Do you require them to make changes?
We don't. That's actually something that we've been thinking about, is putting it into our promissory notes when there is significant repairs that need to be made, and requiring that those repairs be made, and then we would have an inspection process after the fact. Honestly, though, a lot of the times when we have a property that needs a bunch of work, we end up selling it to an investor instead of an homeowner.
Okay. And when you sell it to a homeowner that's living in the property, who's responsible for the repairs?
The homeowner. We have nothing to do with any of that. They're responsible for all their taxes, all their insurance, all the repairs, all of that. We don't have anything to do with it. It is the closest thing to mailbox money that you'll get is owning a note.
So under no circumstances would you go in and do any repairs if the person said, "Hey, my furnace isn't working, AC isn't working, I can't afford," then like
We did that
you
one
would.
time, and it was really because they moved in, and they just right after they moved in, they discovered there was a major problem with the AC, and
Okay,
we just felt that it was the right thing to do. It was the
got
ethical
it,
thing
got
to
it.
do, to go in and help them with those repairs because they had just moved in, and they honestly didn't have the money to go, spend several $1,000s on that repair. So we did that. We did that for them. But I
Yeah, you're
think that's
right.
the only
This
time I
is
can think of that we did something after we closed. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, no, I was just curious because I've heard some investors, they make an exception. They're not very clear on, the repairs. They're like, "Oh, I will help them with some of them," but it's great that you have it very clear that, hey, this is your house, your responsibility, you take care of it. This way, you set the expectation. So that's great, man. And you're right. This
Yeah.
is as close to mailbox money you'll get in real estate. Rental properties, and then also with it seems like, based on kind of what we talked about, it's truly passive if you're doing it correctly. And then, you have a lot less headache and higher rate of return also. So yeah, this is something I need
Mhm.
to start looking into. Cool, man. Thank you for sharing your story. So I've a couple of last few questions to just learn a little bit more about you. What do you do for fun?
Well, I've got 7-year-old twin boys, so
Oh,
I'm
nice.
doing a lot of things
Congratulations.
with them all the time.
Yeah,
And but I love hunting and fishing, so I'm actually leaving on Friday to go quail hunting back in Texas.
oh,
So
nice.
I spend
Cool,
a lot
man.
of my time bird hunting with my dog. Yeah.
Nice, nice. That sounds fun. All right. The book that has had the biggest influence in your life, it could be personal, business, or one for each category.
Hands down, rigging the game. So
Rigging the
I'm
game.
also a member of the Whale Club with Paul Sparks and Steve Trang, and the certainty principles that we go through in there are based on the book called Rigging the Game, and it's completely changed my whole business and my life. It's an operating system for how to make better decisions and to control the mistakes that we make as visionary entrepreneurs and all chasing all the shiny objects and chasing more deals and more revenue and scaling wrong and all of those kind of things. Rigging the game in the Whale Club with Steve and Paul has been just a huge, huge impact on me for sure.
Oh man, awesome. We'll definitely check that out. Yeah, it sounds like a book that I could use. Last question. If you could spend a day with anyone dead or alive, who would you want to spend the day with and why?
I think I would say Charlie Munger. Yeah. I mean, everybody talks about Warren Buffett, but Charlie Munger, I think, has such an amazing amount of knowledge, not just on investing, but on what I was just talking about, rigging the game and decision making. And he has a framework for how he looks at the world that to me is pretty amazing. And getting to spend the day with him would probably be pretty incredible.
Yeah, great answer, man. All right, man. How can someone who's listening to this podcast get in touch with you? What's the best way? Are you pretty active on social?
I'm trying to be more active on social media, but I'm not very good at it. So I'm crazy. I always just give out my cell phone number. So 806-340-1345. Text me. It's always on silent. I never answer phone calls, but I try to always get back to people that text me. If you got deals anywhere in the Texas Panhandle, we'll buy them. We buy a lot of deals from wholesalers too, and we work with a lot of wholesalers to take bad cash deals and turn them into amazing creative deals. We do that a lot. And then if you want to invest in any of our stuff, love to have a conversation with you.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jake. Thank you for sharing your journey about creative financing, man. It seems like you're doing it the right way, especially given like where the market is right now. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing that and being on the show.
Thanks, Rod. Appreciate it.